So today we're going to do a New York State inspection, just to tell you what's involved in that process. It's kind of lengthy, but when you do it a bunch of times, we go through it pretty quickly. This is probably not absolutely 100% correct, but it gives you an idea of what's involved. So the first thing we do when we bring in the vehicle, we drive the vehicle first to make sure that the vehicle, there's no excessive clunking. When we press on the brakes, that the vehicle doesn't veer hard left or right and actually stops. We also check brake travel to make sure it doesn't sink to the floor. Once we get the vehicle in, we will check the rear lights for brake, turn, and four ways. We also check to make sure both, if the vehicle has two license plate lights, they both have to be operating. And also the third brake light, all the bulbs have to light. And then we go to the front. Also marker lights, if there are marker lights, we check those as well. Although marker lights are not part of the inspection, but we tell the customer. Headlights, high beams we check, left turn, right turn, and four ways as well. Also for the customer, we'll check the fog lights if indeed it has fog lights. The next step would be to check the horn, which we did in the previous shot, to make sure that it is audible. We will also check all the vehicles on the ground. We're going to check the wipers to make sure they're not ripped or torn. Each wiper, that is part of the inspection, and it's failable, believe it or not. Okay, so probably one of the last things we have to check before we put this up in the air is all the safety belts. They have to work properly. So we want to be able to apply it and release it. Any deviation from that is failure, and there should be as many belts as there are passengers allowed in this vehicle. So in this vehicle, this is a 5-passenger vehicle, so we would check both fronts. And also on this vehicle, there's 3 rears. So we would check each belt, apply and release with no issues. So the next step is something that's relatively new to the New York State inspection is the tint. We have to measure the tint on windows. So we invested in a tint meter. If anyone's never seen this before, the police carry these. So if you do get pulled over, they can check on site to see how much light is coming into the vehicle. So what we do to check this is we will turn the machine on, and it calibrates itself. So this is very easy. This thing has a magnet on it. So we we put the meter on the back and on the front, and I'm gonna guess this is about 77%, 78%. Most automotive glass, what we've measured with no tint on it, straight from the factories, about 77 to 78%. So if you put any tint on a vehicle, chances are it's going to fail. The law states that you are allowed, this can be as low as 69%. It's really 70, but they allow 1% error for the machine itself. That should be 77% to 78%. So this vehicle passes. Now this is where it gets tricky. On a passenger car, the way you can tell if it's a passenger car is On every vehicle, the vehicle is classified in the type of vehicle it is. As you can see right here, passenger car. So, the tint law in New York is a vehicle labeled passenger car. All these windows would have to meet that criteria I just told you, 70% or higher. On a vehicle that is classified as a multi-purpose vehicle, MPV, or a truck, the front windows have to comply. The rear windows, this window, or if it's like just an SUV, the rear window can be considerably darker. It's not. There's no law. There's no regulation on that. And for all vehicles, the back window, there's no regulation as well. As long as you have a driver and passenger outside mirror. I know it's kind of confusing, but that's what it is. So on the subject of mirrors, we have all our mirrors have to be, there can't be any cracks or damage to the mirror. It has to be positively attached to the vehicles, which you can see this is. I have seen customers come in with drywall screws holding this in. As long as it's secure, it passes. And the glass is not damaged or distorted. You gotta be able to look through the glass. The whole idea behind this is not to empty your wallet, it's to make sure the vehicle is safe, which that's their intent. The next part of the inspection, we'll check the glass. On each piece of glass in every car, there's a safety rating, and if you can take a look right there, there's an AS1, automotive safety glass with a 1 rating. We check every piece of glass. I'll show you that one. And then let's take another one over here. As you can see, also over here as well. So next we're going to check the windshield for any cracks or stars, what they call a star crack. This applies for the windshield only. If there is any crack that is more than 11 inches long, is failure, or any part of that crack goes into the windshield wiper sweep area, is cause for failure as well. As far as a star crack or like a stone chip, anything greater than 3 inches in diameter is cause for failure as well. So while the vehicle is still on the ground, I'm going to do part of the brake inspection, which is we're going to test the parking brake to make sure it holds and releases. So on this vehicle, it does not have parking brake cables. A lot of the newer vehicles have electronic parking brakes, which is very cool. Except when they fail, then they become pretty expensive. But part of how we test them is I'm gonna put it in drive, apply the brake, vehicle shouldn't move. I'm gonna release the brake, vehicle should move, which it will. So that part of the test passes. Okay, the next part of the inspection is going to be the Serpentine Belt. As you can see, let me get a pointer here. What we want to do is get a look at that belt. Make sure there's no fraying, cracks, any tears in the belt, any damage that can cause that belt to fail, because if that fails, you probably won't have power steering, no charging on some vehicles, no alternator, depending on how many belts are running the vehicle. Most vehicles have one belt running everything. Now you can have tiny little cracks in these ribs, which is not cause for failure, but if it's if it's cracked all the way through, it's a good idea, and it would probably fail inspection. That's under the interpretation of the inspector, which a lot of this is, but that's something definitely that could be cause for failure. So at this point, what I like to do is shake down the front end, make sure there's no loose parts, no loose ball joints, tie rods. So we'll give it a shakedown, and the way we usually do that is we'll shake side to side. This is a newer vehicle, so I don't expect to see anything. This is nice and tight. There's no clunking. Depending on the type of suspension that you have, this is a McPherson strut, so with it unloaded, we can check for ball joint play, which again, this has nothing. So I'm happy with that. I will check this side as well. And we're good. So next we'll check for the presence of the catalytic converter. This has one here and one here. Make sure that that's present. As we move on down the vehicle, we're going to just kind of do a general check to see if there's anything stands out. Shocks are part of the inspection as well. They can be leaking. It's not cause for failure, but if they're broken, that is cause for failure. Also, springs. Any break in a spring is going to be cause for failure as well. Control arms, we're going to get a general look at those. Those look pretty decent. Brake hoses, we don't want to see any fraying of the hose. Any beneath this rubber is cord reinforcement. You don't want to see any of that. Any cracks, rubbing, anything like that would be cause for failure. So we're going to check the front struts now. Those are your front struts. Those look, they're well attached. These hoses look good. For your brakes, we're going to pull a wheel now and look at the brakes. What we're actually looking for, if you can see, is these are your lower ball joints. We're looking for play in there. Which is, unless it's extremely loose, New York State says it will pass inspection with some play. Now, the tie rod, you have an inner and outer tie rod right here. There should be no play there. Outer, inner. And everything is really tight on this. These bushings, there's no play in the bushings. The control arms look good. The frame. There can't be any holes in New York. We have, they put salt on the roads, which actually just devours cars. So we do see some frames sometimes with holes in them. You can have holes in the frame as long as the structural integrity is still there. So this all looks pretty good. We're going to get it up in the air a little bit higher So now we're going to check the condition of the rotor. This rotor looks pretty good. The edges, as you can see, get a little bit crusty. That's not too bad. If the customer isn't complaining of any brake pulsation, which he's not, that really has no effect at this point. A good look at that hose again. That hose is in great shape. Sometimes they'll fray right here where they're crimped. The front strut, I'm gonna check to make sure that there's no broken parts of the spring, which is fairly common on an older vehicle. And then we'll get a look at the pad life, which as you can tell right here, between here and here, this part right here, that's your pad life, which these look great. That's the inboard pad, and then the outboard pad is on this side, which you may or may not be able to see without the caliper. You might be able to, let me try pushing it this way. That part right there, there's your pad. And those things look practically brand new. Also, as you can count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wheel studs. All the wheels have to have all their lug nuts. A missing lug nut is cause for failure. Okay. I'm going to put this back on. So this is a sample brake pad for inspection, front or rear. If it has rear disc brakes, which a lot of the new vehicles do, we inspect for any cracks in this pad material, any missing pieces, uneven wear. It fails for any of the above, and also if it's metal on metal contact, which you're going to hear that, because when you go to press the brakes, they're just going to grind like crazy. That would be cause for failure. On a brake shoe, which is a little bit different, you're allowed up to 1/32 of an inch, which isn't a lot. Once it's below 1/32 of an inch of shoe material, it would be cause for failure. Now, I removed the right front tire. The New York State law states that we have to remove at least one front tire. It's up to the inspector to check beyond that. He can remove a front and a rear. He can remove all four, but the minimum requirement is one front tire. On this vehicle, most inspectors with low miles, this vehicle has low miles, they're probably just going to remove one tire, just because there's very rarely is there anything to see that's questionable on a low mile vehicle. Good. So this little guy is a tread depth gauge, which measures tread depth in 30 of an inch. Now, the law states for New York that any passenger vehicle under 10,000 pounds can't be any lower, the tread depth can't be any less than 2/32. So let's take a reading at the two worst adjacent points in the tread. So you find the worst part of the tire. Again, this is a fairly new vehicle, so there really isn't going to be a worst part of the tire. But I'll push that in all the way, and we'll take a reading. I'm going to take a reading there, and a reading there. And that is about 6.5 30 seconds. So this is well within the law. Newer tires are between 8 and 10 seconds. So most tires have a tread wear ridge right there. When you can see that, when that is flush with the tire, with the tread, you're pretty darn close. 2/32 of an inch on a tire. If you get to that point, it's pretty darn bald. So we will check all the tires for that in the same manner. We'll also check to make sure there isn't any cut or slices in the sidewall, that the valve stem looks decent, or any chunks or dry rot, severe dry rot that compromises the integrity of the tire. We'll scan your registration, and that puts it into our machine here. And that'll ask us a series of questions. And all this data is going to go into, or go directly to New York State. It wants to know the mileage. 34,392 on this vehicle. 34,392. It's going to ask us which tire we took off, or all the tires we took off. It wants to ask us if the airbag light is on. If the airbag light is on a vehicle, it is not cause for failure. They just want to know if it was on or not, which in this case it was not. Last thing, a lot of vehicles do not have a gas cap anymore. We're going to check. This does have a gas cap, and it's tight. Okay, this is the emissions part of the inspection. If you were here for safety only, the first a 2021 or 2020, you would be done. But this is a 2018, so we are going to do the emissions part, which involves us plugging into the vehicle data link, which is underneath the, in most cases, underneath the driver dash. We'll plug into this, and then again, and now, as you can see, the machine is looking at data in the vehicle to make sure there's no check engine lights, no codes, no cleared codes, and that all the monitors in the computer are up. So now we just do what the machine tells us to do. So now we're going to find out how we did. It looks like we passed inspection. So I gotta go get a sticker, that number sticker, and we'll put it on the vehicle. Okay, so here's our new sticker with the present month punched out, and this will be due at the last day of April by 2022. So it's good till 2022, end of April. On the back, the inspector will put the present mileage, We'll scrape the old sticker. And voila, we are good to go.